Hey, Wolang teachers! This is video series part 2 for target language 90% and how on earth we're gonna get there. I'm Devin at La Libre and I'm gonna lead you through our teacher fears and the gaps in teaching when it comes to target language. So we all know that the American Council on the Teaching of Foreign Languages prescribes to all of us in their 2010 recommendations for target language that we should be using 90% target language in our classrooms and that we should be using comprehensible input as a vehicle for communicative language so that everybody understands what's going on in our classrooms. But whoa, that is a huge task to undertake. And when you ask world language teachers about this, in my personal experience, most of the time they're like, sweet, let's do it, I'm on board. But then when they actually get down to it, it usually goes something like this. How? How am I going to do that? Or you have people who are like, yeah, awesome, I'm 90 to 100% and I'm doing great. But they've been teaching for like 10, 15 years and they have access to wonderful, beautiful professional development programs. And most of the time, we have this huge gap when it comes to the mandates at the top for ACTFL on, okay, you got to teach 90% target language. And us in the classroom being like, how are we going to do that? What's going on between here and here? So that's what this video is about. What's going on between here and here? How we're going to get there. Because we all want to get there. That's why we're here, right? We want to get to 90%. How are we going to do that? Now, depending on what level you're actually at, because maybe you are at 90 to 100%, and maybe you want to get better at it. Or maybe you're like me, and for a while you've been kind of like riding dirty at like 50 to 60%, and you know you got to do better. So here's where we are. Sounds reasonable, right? Let's get to 90%. But here's the problem. For most teachers, they want to get there, but honestly, ACTFL says we got to get there, but there's really not many examples for us. I don't know about you, but for most teachers who are coming up in the, I can only speak towards the American school system because that's what I'm familiar with, and I know we've got a wide audience out here. I have never been part of a target language-centered classroom. I've never been part of a communicative language classroom. The first time that I was ever in a classroom that was completely in the target language was in my second year of college. So that was the first time that I was ever exposed to what that even looked like. And when it came to student teaching, I had never observed what a target language-centered classroom looked like either. So I had been reading some books about how it's important to use target language in the classroom, but I never once saw what it looked like. And from the experience that I've heard from just my wanderings on the internet and as well as my experience in the workforce, that's pretty common. So we have a gap between what is expected of us as language teachers and what we're actually seeing out in the teaching environment, is that there's not a lot of readily available classrooms for us to see how this actually looks in the real world. Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't lots of amazing teachers who are doing amazing things in their classroom when it comes to target language. It just means that they're not as readily available as we would like them to be. So that's, of course, why we're here today, to make that a reality. Here's how you do it. YouTube. They're online. Go to YouTube. There's a bunch of teachers out there. I've got a bunch of links for you because this is how I figured out how to use a lot of the strategies that I do. Use the links that you're going to see at the bottom here for classrooms that you can watch and figure out the strategies that they've got, because they might not be readily available in your area and they might not be as conveniently across the hall as you would like them to be. So this is how I figured out how to use those strategies, and this is how I figured out how to get around the problem of not having people that I could go see on a day-to-day basis in my building, YouTube. So that's how we're going to get around that number one teacher fear here, is what does this look like on an everyday basis? How can I do this with my students? YouTube. Also, there's a lot of research and literature out there with other bloggers like myself who have real life strategies for you too. So we're going to bring them all to you in this series. We're going to have some video interviews, and we're also going to have lots of blogs and links to other articles from other people who are absolute experts in this field, been doing it far longer than I have, with real life strategies on what they do, so that you've got it all in one place and you know exactly what you can use, and you can kind of cherry pick for things that work for you. The other part that we have in this that we kind of have to deal with as teachers is something that affects the entire profession. It's not just world language teachers, is that we have the problem of teaching the way that we were taught. That doesn't work in the current teaching climate, because teaching is not the same as it was even 10 years ago. The entire field is totally different. Y'all know what I'm talking about. So when we teach the way that we're taught, it's inherently ineffective, but it's so easy to do because you're just going off of habitual reactions, right? I mean, the stuff is there. Maybe a teacher left it in your classroom. You just already know how to follow that tried and true formula, whatever it might be, and it requires so much energy and momentum to change. But it's so necessary. And that's the true problem with teacher overwhelm that isn't nearly as addressed as it should be, is that with all of the extra expectations on us with overwhelm, with time, and things that nitpick at us every day, is that when we've got all those other extraneous things, is that they pile up, and the things that really need to happen go on the back burner. It's that whole argument of urgent versus important, like those urgent little things every day versus the really important things that we got to do. Make sure you're attending to those things that are important. Target language is important, and it will help take care of the things that are urgent and nitpicking at you every day. That's what I mean by when you work towards more target language, it will help to solve some of those problems that are nitpicking at you every day. Also, we've got some things that we need to talk about in terms of, it doesn't happen often, but we also do have a little bit of misinformation that we need to tackle, where teachers who are really into target language use are the type of people who will stand in front of a classroom and talk, but they're not interacting with their students. And so, yeah, you are using target language, but you're not interacting. So your students are hearing a lot, but they're not really working with it, which is a little counterintuitive. It's not really genuinely communicative. So when teachers see that, they get a little bit of a misconception about what target language is all about. So we got to make sure that we're avoiding that route as well. Our target language use, if we really want it to be effective and communicative, should be in short bursts. Language that is high frequency, targeted, frequent pauses, and all student-centered. When it's teacher-centered, the teacher's the one that's learning, and that's not really the point of class either. We also have to talk about this issue of language skills, which is not an easy one to address with teachers because it makes us all uncomfortable, kind of including myself. I am a teacher who teaches 2 languages. I teach Spanish and French, which means that depending on what level I'm teaching and how long it's been since I've taught that subject, like right now I'm only teaching French, so you know what's going to happen? My Spanish is going to suffer. So when it comes back to the time where I'm going to be teaching Spanish again, or depending on how long it's been since I've traveled to that country, read a Spanish book, anything along those lines, you know, keeping my language fresh in my head, which is, of course, with all my free time. That's something that we need to address here, is that when it comes to teaching a language, you have to have really high-level skills in order to teach an exclusively language-driven class. And that's something that's hard for teachers to address, is that many people feel, do I have the language skills for that? Stop it. Stop it. Your language skills don't need to, I'm saying that to myself too, stop it. Your language skills don't have to be perfect for you to do a great job for your students. And even if your language skills really do need to be brushed up, like mine, because since I teach 2, I have gaps in both of my language skills. Like, for example, my Spanish conversational skills are definitely much higher than my French ones because I studied abroad in a Spanish-speaking country, but not a French one. So I have gaps in my proficiencies in both of those areas, in different areas. Those of you who teach both languages know exactly what I'm talking about. So when it comes to that point, when you're teaching in those classes, remember that your expertise as the teacher, especially if you're a non-native speaker like me, don't put that kind of bad juju on yourself. Yes, you have gaps, and yes, your language is not perfect, but you don't have to be the source of input all the time. And we're going to talk about specific strategies of how you can do that. Your main source of expertise is the provider of high-quality instruction and high-quality input, but you don't have to be the source of input all the time. So we're going to talk about how you can get around that. Because it doesn't always have to be you who's doing all the speaking. You're the facilitator. You don't always have to be the teacher. Something else that I think is probably the big issue for most teachers, and my number one issue, I think, is when you take away English or whatever the native language that you're using in your classroom is, you're taking away those management tools. You're taking away those relationship builders. And that is real scary for most language teachers. How on earth am I supposed to build relationships that are meaningful with my students if I can't speak to them in their language? How on earth am I going to manage this class if I can't use the language that they know best? Guess what? You can still use English for those things, but you probably don't have to use as much English as you think that you need to. 85% of your students are probably going to respond to the same 10 redirects. So start using the same 10 redirects from the beginning. Open your books, if you use books. Take out a pen, take out a pencil. Stop doing that. Don't touch that. I love you. Like, whatever you're doing, teach them those simple redirects. And you can also build relationships with simple things too. Like, I like your shirt. I like your hair. I like everything about you. You're really good at sports. That's so cool. You're so awesome. I love you. Whatever you're doing, you can do a lot of those things in simple, targeted, high-frequency structures. And you can do most of your really hard-hitting relationship building and management tools in English. And when you save English for those key moments, they listen. And they listen really intently because they're not nearly as used to you speaking English in those moments. So when it really goes down and you start speaking English, they all look around and they're like, oh no, we gotta listen. And it works really well. I tried it a few times last year and it's for real. There's a lot of strategies that you can use in order to use target language to build relationships, though. So I've got a lot of work to do this year to make sure that I'm using more target language to build relationships because I have been over-relying on English to do that. But there's actually some really sweet things that you can do to make sure that you're using more target language in your classroom to build those relationships. And my all-time favorite way to do this is through something that Bryce Hedstrom taught me at a conference I went to of his last year called Special Person Interviews. Those of you who know what I'm talking about, like, y'all know how well these work. So I'm going to talk about more of this and how it works, but the basic gist is that you interview students in the target language by using words and structures that they know and that you've taught them to ask them all about them and what they like to do and what their cool talents are and things that you wouldn't really get to know about them normally. And you use it all in the target language. It's so much fun. And it really does build a really cool classroom community, and it's in the target language. So we're going to talk about how to do that. Since we're talking about strategies, you know what's coming your way? Are you ready for this? I don't know if you're ready for this, but it's coming. We've got experts that have been doing this far longer than I have who are going to show you and me better ways to build relationships with your students without over-relying on English. Because I know that's a weak point of mine, and I'm sure it's something that other people struggle with, because it's a fear that many teachers have approached me about when talking about using more target language. So we're going to address that as well as all of the things on this list. We're going to make sure that you can cross off each of these as you go through the year, making sure that you and I can both use more target language in our classrooms with the help of all of these panelists. They're going to give you links to all of their articles on all of the juicy secrets that they've got with their people and how they've been using more target language with their students. So you're going to definitely find something that works for you. We've got some videos coming your way from all different experts all over the world on how target language has made more proficiency happen in their classroom environments. We've got more videos coming your way from me and from some other interviews with panelists that are agreeing to share some of their secrets with you. So, stick with us. We got more from this video series, we got more blogs coming your way, and we got those panelists, y'all. So I'll see you on the next one.